The vast darkness between stars held no secrets from the Zephyrian hegemony. Their empire stretched across 12 star systems, each one conquered with the same brutal efficiency that had made them the dominant force in their corner of the galaxy. Admiral Keth Var stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, watching the blue dot of Earth grow larger on his screens. "Such a small world," he said to his second-in-command, Captain Vextall. "Hard to believe it once showed promise." The captain nodded, his 6 eyes blinking in sequence as he reviewed the data. "Our historical records show they achieved basic spaceflight approximately 500,000 years ago. Brief radio transmissions, primitive orbital stations, even a few attempts at interplanetary travel. And then nothing," Kethvar finished. "Complete electromagnetic silence for 500,000 years, another species that burned bright and died young." The Admiral's confidence was not misplaced. The Third Fleet under his command consisted of 800 warships, each one capable of destroying entire cities with a single blast. Their energy shields could deflect any known weapon, and their antimatter cannons could crack moons in half. In 5 centuries of expansion, no primitive world had lasted more than a day against hegemony firepower. As the fleet moved deeper into the Sol system, their sensors painted a picture of abandonment. The asteroid belt showed no signs of mining operations. The outer planets had no orbital facilities. Mars appeared as dead and red as their databases suggested it should be. Even Earth itself showed no electromagnetic signatures, no city lights on the dark side, no orbital traffic of any kind. "Completely lifeless," reported the sensor operator. "Atmosphere shows normal oxygen and nitrogen levels, suggesting the planet could still support life, but we detect no technology whatsoever." Kethvar allowed himself a small smile. This would be the easiest conquest in hegemony history. The planet appeared rich in resources, with vast oceans and fertile continents that would serve their colonization efforts well. Best of all, there would be no resistance to slow down their operations. "Set course for standard orbital bombardment pattern," he ordered. "We'll clear any remaining biological contamination, then begin survey operations for colony sites." The fleet arranged itself in the classic hegemony formation, with heavy cruisers forming an outer ring around the planet, while destroyers and carriers took inner positions. It was a pattern they had used hundreds of times before on hundreds of worlds. The routine had become almost boring. Below them, Earth turned slowly in the void, its blue oceans and white clouds creating swirling patterns that caught the sunlight. From orbit, it looked peaceful, almost inviting. The continents showed green and brown patches that suggested vegetation, but no geometric patterns that would indicate cities or farming. Whatever civilization had once existed here had left no visible trace. "Bombardment systems ready," announced the weapons officer. "Antimatter charges locked onto primary land masses." "Fire when ready," Kethvar commanded. The first wave of missiles launched from 50 different ships, streaking down toward Earth's surface like falling stars. Each one carried enough antimatter to vaporize a mountain range. The Admiral watched with satisfaction as the weapons disappeared into Earth's atmosphere, already imagining the massive explosions that would clear the way for hegemony expansion. But the explosions never came. "Sir," the sensor operator said, confusion clear in his voice, "I'm showing no impact signatures." "What do you mean, no impacts?" Kethvar demanded. "The missiles appear to have simply disappeared, sir. They vanished from all sensors the moment they entered the upper atmosphere." The Admiral frowned. Equipment malfunctions were rare, but not impossible. "Launch a second wave. Double the payload." This time, 100 missiles fell toward Earth, their antimatter warheads glowing with contained destruction. Again, they vanished without trace the moment they touched the planet's atmosphere. No explosions, no energy signatures, no debris. It was as if the weapons had never existed. "Sir," the communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving some kind of interference on all channels. Very faint, but it's definitely artificial." Kethvar's confidence began to waver. In 500 years of conquest, he had never encountered anything like this. Deploy reconnaissance drones. I want detailed scans of the planet's surface. 20 sleek drones detached from the carrier ships and dove toward Earth. Their advanced sensors could detect technology through miles of rock and water. If anything was hiding on that planet, the drones would find it. The drones reached the upper atmosphere and immediately began transmitting impossible data. Energy readings spiked across the entire planet, showing power sources that dwarfed the output of the hegemony's largest reactors. Massive structures appeared on the scans, buried deep beneath oceans and continents, connected by what looked like transportation networks that spanned the globe. "Sir, these readings can't be correct," the sensor operator reported, his voice shaking. "The drones are detecting energy signatures that would require technology far beyond anything in our databases." Before HFY could respond, all 20 drones went silent. One moment they were transmitting data, the next, they had vanished as completely as the missiles. The Admiral stared at his screens, trying to process what was happening. Every instinct told him to retreat, to call for reinforcements, but his pride refused to accept that a supposedly dead world could threaten the mighty Third Fleet. "Sir," the communications officer said urgently, "we're receiving a transmission. It's coming from the planet's surface." "Put it on the main screen." The bridge fell silent as a voice filled the air, speaking in perfect Zephyrian. The accent was strange, ancient, but the words were clear and precise. "Hegemony Fleet, this is Terra Command. You have 30 seconds to withdraw from our system before we demonstrate why our species survived when you thought we had perished." HFY felt his blood turn cold. The voice was calm, almost conversational, but there was something underneath it that made his scales prickle with fear. It was the tone of someone who held all the advantages and knew it. "This is Admiral HFY of the Zephyrian Hegemony," he transmitted back. "You will surrender immediately or face the consequences of resisting our expansion." The response came back instantly, and this time there was no mistaking the amusement in the voice. "Admiral, you have 25 seconds remaining." Around the fleet, space itself began to shimmer. Gravitational readings spiked and fell in patterns that made no sense. Stars seemed to bend in the distance, as if reality itself was being twisted by invisible hands. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy buildups throughout the system," the sensor operator reported, panic creeping into his voice. "Whatever's down there, it's powering up." HFY looked at his fleet, at the 800 ships that had conquered dozens of worlds, and realized with growing horror that they might not be the predators in this situation. For the first time in his military career, the Admiral considered the possibility that he had made a terrible mistake. The countdown continued in his mind as he stared at the peaceful blue world below, wondering what kind of civilization could survive 500,000 years in complete silence, only to emerge when threatened with exactly the kind of calm confidence he had just heard. Earth turned slowly beneath them, keeping its secrets, waiting for humanity's answer to 500,000 years of preparation. 3 kilometers beneath the Pacific Ocean, Admiral Sarah Chen Okafor watched the alien fleet through sensors that existed in dimensions the invaders could not even imagine. The command center around her buzzed with quiet activity as thousands of human operators monitored every ship, every communication, every weapon system in the Hegemony fleet. "Analysis complete," reported Commander Jackson, his fingers dancing across controls that manipulated quantum fields instead of simple electronics. "Their technology is approximately 400 years behind our current capabilities. Energy-based. Weapons, conventional antimatter drives, basic force shields." Sarah nodded, unsurprised. Humanity had been watching the Zephyrian hegemony for 3 centuries, ever since their expansion had brought them within 50 light years of Sol. Every aspect of their technology, their tactics, their culture had been studied and cataloged by human observers who moved through space-time itself like ghosts. "Estimated casualties if we allow them to complete their bombardment?" she asked. 0, came the immediate reply. Our atmospheric defense grid neutralized their missiles before they could reach the lower atmosphere. The antimatter was safely converted to energy and fed into the planetary grid. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. The aliens had no idea that their most powerful weapons had just provided Earth with enough power to run the defense systems for a month. It was almost insulting how primitive their approach was. The holographic display in front of her showed not just the alien fleet, but the true scope of human civilization. Beneath Earth's surface, vast cities housed 12 billion people in comfort that would have seemed like magic to their ancestors. Maglev tunnels connected every continent, allowing travel from New York to Beijing in under an hour. The oceans themselves had been colonized, with underwater metropolises that harvested the sea's resources while maintaining perfect ecological balance. But it was what lay deeper that truly demonstrated humanity's evolution. The planet's core had been partially hollowed out and converted into the largest quantum computer ever built, its processing power capable of simulating entire universes. Around it, manufacturing facilities the size of countries produced materials that existed only in theoretical physics textbooks when the hegemony was taking its first steps into space. "Ma'am," interrupted Lieutenant Torres from the communications station, "the fleet commander is requesting our surrender." Sarah laughed, a sound that carried 500,000 years of human determination. "Open a channel. Let's educate them." She stood and walked to the center of the command platform, her uniform bearing the simple insignia of the Terran Defense Council. Around her, displays showed the locations of human installations throughout the galaxy, hidden bases that had been established over millennia of secret expansion. Today, all of them would reveal themselves. "Hegemony Fleet," she spoke into the quantum transmitter, her voice carried instantly to every ship in orbit. "This is Admiral Chen Okafor of the Terran Defense Council. I want you to understand something very important before we proceed." She gestured, and the main display shifted to show the solar system as the aliens saw it, then revealed the truth. Mars was not dead, but housed a population of 50 million in underground cities that had been thriving for 200,000 years. The asteroid belt was not natural debris, but a carefully constructed defensive grid where each asteroid contained enough firepower to destroy a star system. "You see, Admiral Kethavar, when your scouts reported this system as lifeless, they were only seeing what we wanted them to see. Humanity learned a very important lesson when we first detected your expansion. The galaxy is a dangerous place for species that advertise their existence." The display continued its revelation. Jupiter's moons were shown to be hollow constructs, each one a shipyard capable of producing vessels that could manipulate space-time itself. Saturn's rings were revealed as a massive sensor array that could detect quantum fluctuations across half the galaxy. Even the Sun had been modified, its core converted into a stellar engineering project that could manufacture exotic matter on scales the hegemony couldn't comprehend. "So we made a choice," Sarah continued. "We would master every science, perfect every technology, and prepare for the day when someone like you arrived at our doorstep with conquest in mind." In the depths of the Pacific, automated systems began their final preparations. Across the solar system, weapons platforms that had waited in perfect silence for millennia started to power up. On the moon, construction facilities that had been disguised as natural craters began opening like flowers, revealing the ships that would redefine galactic warfare. "You have been studying space combat for perhaps 1,000 years, Sarah said. "We have been studying it for 500 times that long. You learned to harness antimatter. We learned to edit the fundamental forces of reality. You built faster ships. We learned to fold space itself." The quantum sensors showed her the panic spreading through the alien fleet as their instruments detected energy readings that broke their understanding of physics. Ships that had seemed invincible moments before now appeared as fragile as paper, boats in a hurricane. Commander Jackson looked up from his station. "Ma'am, all defense platforms are online. The moon is ready to deploy the primary fleet. Pluto Station reports the outer system grid is fully powered. Sarah nodded. Humanity had turned the entire solar system into a fortress, but that was only the beginning. Similar installations existed in 17 other star systems, each one carefully hidden until this moment. The Zephyrian hegemony was about to discover that their expansion had been observed, studied, and prepared for by a species they thought was extinct. Admiral Kethvar, she continued, your species has a choice to make. You can order your fleet to withdraw immediately and carry word back to your empire that humanity has returned to the galactic stage. Or you can force us to demonstrate exactly what 500,000 years of preparation has accomplished. She paused, allowing the weight of her words to sink in. Around her, the command center hummed with the power of technologies that existed beyond the aliens' comprehension. Gravity manipulators stood ready to relocate entire ships to random coordinates throughout the galaxy. Time dilation fields could slow enemy vessels to a crawl while human ships moved at normal speed. Matter compilers could disassemble enemy hulls at the molecular level and rebuild them as anything humanity desired. Your 30 seconds begin now, Sarah announced. She cut the transmission and turned to her staff. These men and women were the descendants of Earth's greatest military minds, trained from birth in warfare that spanned dimensions the hegemony couldn't even detect. Their ancestors had sworn that humanity would never again be caught unprepared for threats from the stars, and they had kept that promise. Initiate Phase 1 if they don't withdraw, she ordered. I want them to understand what they're dealing with, but keep them alive. They need to carry word back to their empire about what they've encountered here. On the displays, the alien fleet maintained its position, their commander apparently unable to believe that a supposedly primitive species could threaten his mighty armada. Sarah felt almost sorry for them. They had no idea that they were about to witness the unveiling of humanity's greatest achievement, the transformation of an entire species into something that could survive anything the galaxy threw at them. Countdown continued as Earth waited, patient as always, for the next chapter in humanity's long story. Admiral Kethvar stared at his chronometer as the final seconds ticked away. Around him, his bridge crew waited for orders, their faces showing the confusion and growing fear that had replaced their earlier confidence. The gravitational anomalies were getting stronger, making their instruments behave in ways that defied everything they knew about physics. "Time's up, sir," reported Captain Vextel, his voice barely steady. The Admiral's pride warred with his survival instincts. The Zephyrian hegemony had never retreated from a primitive world. To do so now would mark him as a coward in the eyes of his superiors. But every sensor reading told him that something was terribly wrong with this system. Maintain position, he decided. Deploy attack formation. If these humans want to threaten us, they'll learn what happens to species that challenge the hegemony. It was the worst decision of his military career. The response was immediate and devastating. Space around Earth began to fold in ways that made the bridge crew physically sick to watch. Stars shifted position as gravity itself was manipulated by technologies beyond their comprehension. The familiar constellations twisted into impossible shapes as the humans demonstrated their mastery over the fundamental forces of reality. "Sir," the sensor operator shouted over alarms that had begun blaring throughout the ship. "I'm reading massive objects materializing throughout our formation." The main display flickered and changed, showing what their instruments insisted was impossible. Structures larger than moons were appearing from nothing, simply stepping into normal space-time as if they had been waiting in some hidden dimension. Each one bristled with weapons that made the hegemony's most advanced cannons look like primitive clubs. "They were hiding in folded space," whispered the science officer, his voice filled with awe and terror. "The entire system is a trap." Admiral Kethvar watched his mighty fleet suddenly become insignificant. The humans hadn't built orbital stations or space docks like civilized species. They had weaponized space itself, creating defensive platforms that existed outside normal reality until they were needed. But the real shock came when Earth's moon split open like a mechanical flower. The natural satellite that had hung peacefully in space revealed itself to be an artificial construct of staggering complexity. Layer after layer of armor peeled back to expose the largest military installation the Admiral had ever seen. Ships began emerging from its depths, vessels that seemed to exist only partially in normal space, flickering in and out of visibility like ghosts made of metal and energy. How is this possible? Captain Vextal breathed. The answer came in the form of the human admiral's voice, transmitted directly into their minds rather than through their communication systems. The casual display of technology that could bypass their shields and speak directly to their consciousness sent waves of terror through the bridge crew. 500,000 years of preparation, Admiral, Sarah Chen Okafor's voice said calmly. While your species was learning to split atoms, we were learning to split reality itself. The demonstration began not with weapons fire, but with something far more terrifying. A casual editing of the laws of physics around the hegemony fleet. Ships that had been moving forward suddenly found themselves moving backward. Weapons that had been charged with antimatter suddenly contained ordinary matter. Instead, gravity began flowing in the wrong direction around a dozen vessels, causing their crews to float helplessly as their artificial gravity systems tried to compensate for forces they weren't designed to handle. Sir, the Relentless is reporting that their reactor has gone cold, the communications officer reported, panic clear in his voice. The antimatter simply changed. It's not antimatter anymore. Admiral Kethvar felt the first real fear of his military career as he realized the humans weren't trying to destroy his ships. They were playing with them, demonstrating capabilities that made the hegemony's technology look like stone knives compared to laser cannons. Another group of ships found their weapons systems aging rapidly, metal corroding and circuits failing. As the humans manipulated the flow of time around specific components, the mighty Eternal Dominion shuddered as something impossible happened to its main engines. They began running in reverse, somehow generating negative thrust that fought against the ship's forward momentum. They're not attacking us, the science officer said, his voice filled with horrified understanding. They're editing us, changing the fundamental properties of our ships. On the main display, more human vessels continued to emerge from their hiding places. The asteroid belt revealed itself to be anything but natural, with each rocky body opening to disgorge weapons platforms that defied conventional physics. What they had taken for Jupiter's Great Red Spot began to unfold like an enormous flower, revealing a construction facility that dwarfed anything in hegemony space. But it was the ships themselves that truly broke Admiral Kethvar's spirit. They moved through space without visible propulsion, appeared and disappeared at will, and seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. When they fired their weapons, the beams didn't travel from ship to target. They simply caused the target to experience the effects without any visible connection between cause and effect. A heavy cruiser on the fleet's outer edge suddenly found all of its electrical systems running on direct current instead of the alternating current they were designed for. The ship's computers crashed, its life support failed, and its crew was forced to evacuate in environmental suits. The humans had defeated a capital ship by changing a single property of electrical flow. Sir, the communications officer said urgently, Captain Morthawk is requesting permission to surrender. His ship's armor has been converted to a lighter element. It's now made of aluminum instead of duralloy. Admiral Kethvar closed his eyes and tried to process what was happening. The humans weren't just technologically superior, they had transcended technology entirely. They had learned to manipulate the basic rules that governed reality, turning matter and energy into tools as simple as a child's toys. Admiral, Sarah Chen Okafor's voice spoke directly into his mind again. I want you to understand something. Important. Everything we've shown you so far represents less than 1% of our defensive capabilities. We could have destroyed your entire fleet the moment you entered our system. We chose not to because you need to survive to carry word back to your empire. The human voice paused, and Admiral Kethvar could feel the weight of 500,000 years of preparation behind her words. You see, Admiral, the Zephyrian hegemony is not the first empire to threaten Earth. Over the past 500,000 years, we've identified 17 different species that showed aggressive expansion patterns toward our system. 16 of them received visits from our diplomatic corps and chose to redirect their expansion elsewhere. The Admiral felt his blood turn to ice as the implication sank in. The 17th chose to ignore our warnings and continued their advance toward human space. We removed their entire species from the galaxy as a lesson to others. Their star systems still exist, but they are empty now, serving as monuments to what happens when someone mistakes human patience for human weakness. Around the hegemony fleet, space continued to ripple with displays of power that defied comprehension. Ships found their hulls converted to materials that existed only in theoretical physics. Weapons systems discovered that their targeting computers now calculated in base 3 mathematics instead of binary. The humans were teaching a lesson in humility that no military academy in the galaxy could have prepared the Admiral for. Your choice is simple, the human Admiral continued. Withdraw now and carry word back to your empire that humanity has returned to the galactic stage, or force us to add the Zephyrian hegemony to our collection of empty star systems. Admiral Kethvar looked at his crippled fleet and made the only decision a rational being could make. For the first time in hegemony history, the Third Fleet would retreat from a primitive world. Admiral Kethvar opened his mouth to give the order to retreat, but the words never came. A new voice cut across all communication channels, speaking in the harsh tones of hegemony high command. Admiral Kethvar, this is Fleet Commander Zarthek. I am monitoring your situation from the battlecruiser Infinite Glory, currently positioned at the edge of this system with 200 additional ships. The Admiral's heart sank. Fleet Commander Zarthek was known throughout the hegemony for his ruthless approach to conquest and his complete intolerance for retreat. If Zarthek had arrived with reinforcements, there would be no diplomatic solution to this crisis. Admiral, Zarthek continued, your reports of human resistance are clearly the result of equipment malfunction or crew panic. The Infinite Glory's sensors show no significant technology on that planet. You will resume your attack immediately or face court-martial for cowardice. Sarah Chen Okafor's voice cut smoothly into the transmission, speaking with the calm confidence of someone who held all the advantages. Fleet Commander Zarthek, this is Admiral Chen Okafor of the Terran Defense Council. Since you've chosen to join this discussion, perhaps it's time for a more comprehensive demonstration. What happened next redefined Admiral Kethvar's understanding of what was possible in space warfare. The empty space around Zarthek's reinforcement fleet began to fill with ships that materialized from dimensions the hegemony couldn't detect. Not dozens or hundreds, but thousands of vessels that stepped out of folded space-time like predators emerging from perfect camouflage. Each one was larger than the hegemony's greatest dreadnoughts, their hulls seeming to absorb light itself. But that was only the beginning. Throughout the solar system, celestial bodies that had appeared natural began revealing their true nature. Mars shed its rusty surface like old skin, exposing a planet-sized fortress bristling with weapons that could reshape matter at the quantum level. The gas giants opened like enormous flowers, each one containing construction facilities that had been building humanity's war fleet for millennia. Impossible, Fleet Commander Zarthek transmitted, his voice showing the first cracks of uncertainty. Our deep space sensors would have detected this level of technology. Your sensors detected exactly what we wanted them to detect, Sarah replied. For 300 years, we've been watching your expansion, studying your capabilities, preparing for this moment. Did you really think a species that survived 500,000 years would do so without learning to hide from threats? The true scope of humanity's preparation became clear as more ships continued to appear. The asteroid belt revealed itself to be a defensive grid where each rock was actually a weapons platform capable of manipulating space-time itself. Comets throughout the outer system shed their icy disguises to expose mobile battle stations that had been drifting through space for centuries, patient as only humans could be patient. Admiral Kethvar watched in stunned silence as his instruments struggled to count the human vessels. The displays kept changing their estimates. 1,000 ships, then 5,000, then 10,000. The humans weren't just revealing a hidden fleet. They were revealing a hidden civilization that had been preparing for war while the rest of the galaxy thought they were extinct. "Sir," his science officer whispered, "the energy readings from those ships, they're drawing power directly from the quantum vacuum. They have unlimited energy." Fleet Commander Zarthek's voice crackled across the communication channels, anger replacing uncertainty. "I don't care how many ships they have. The hegemony has conquered 1,000 worlds. We will not be intimidated by human tricks." "Very well," Sarah said calmly. "Let us show you what 500,000 years of preparation has accomplished." The demonstration began with the human ships simply disappearing. One moment, thousands of vessels filled the space around both hegemony fleets. The next moment, they were gone, vanishing from all sensors as if they had never existed. Admiral Kethvar felt a chill run down his spine as he realized the implications. The humans could become completely invisible to any detection method the hegemony possessed. Then the human ships began reappearing inside the hegemony formations, not near the alien vessels, but literally occupying the same space, their hulls, intersecting with hegemony ships in ways that should have been impossible. The humans had learned to phase their matter to exist in the spaces between atoms, allowing them to position themselves anywhere they chose without regard for physical obstacles. "Sir," the sensor operator reported, his voice shaking, "there's a human ship inside our engine compartment. It's coexisting with our reactor chamber." Similar reports flooded in from across both fleets. Human vessels had materialized within the hulls of hegemony ships, not to attack but to demonstrate their complete mastery over the laws of physics. They existed as ghosts within the alien vessels, present but unable to interact with normal matter unless they chose to solidify. Fleet Commander Zarthek's flagship, the Infinite Glory, suddenly found itself with a human dreadnought occupying the same space as its command deck. The alien crew could see the human vessel's interior through their own walls, watching human personnel calmly going about their duties as if existing inside another ship was perfectly normal. "This is impossible," Zarthek transmitted, his voice now showing clear panic. "Matter cannot exist in the same space." "Matter, as you understand it, cannot," Sarah agreed. "But we stopped limiting ourselves to your understanding of physics approximately 400,000 years ago. Would you like us to demonstrate what we learned about manipulating time?" Without waiting for an answer, the human fleet began their next demonstration. Time itself started flowing differently around the hegemony ships. Some vessels found themselves moving through moments that passed like hours, their crews aging years, in minutes. Others experienced time acceleration, their internal clocks running at fantastic speeds while their crews lived entire lifetimes in what seemed like seconds to outside observers. Admiral Kethvar watched his chronometer slow to a crawl as the humans wrapped his flagship in a temporal field that made seconds stretch into minutes. Around him, his crew moved like statues, their words drawn out into incomprehensible groans as time passed differently for each member of the bridge crew. But the most terrifying demonstration came when the humans began editing the hegemony ship's history. Vessels that had been battle-tested veterans of dozens of campaigns suddenly found themselves equipped with weapons they had never carried, bearing scars from battles they had never fought. The humans reached backwards through time and changed the past, rewriting the construction history of the alien ships to include modifications that existed only in Earth's databases. "Your flagship," Sarah's voice explained calmly, "now contains 17 different weapon systems that we designed specifically to counter Zephyrian technology. According to its manufacturing records, they were installed in the shipyard where it was built. Your engineers will find maintenance logs stretching back 50 years for equipment they've never seen before." Fleet Commander Zarthek's voice came through the communication channels as a broken whisper. "Who are you? What are you?" "We are what happens when a species decides that survival is not enough," Sarah replied. "We are what humanity became when we realized that the galaxy is full of threats, and the only way to protect ourselves was to become something greater than any threat we might face." The human ships began to fade back into their hidden dimensions, but the message had been delivered with crystal clarity. The Zephyrian hegemony had encountered something beyond their comprehension, a civilization that had transcended the normal limitations of matter, energy, space, and time. As the last human vessel disappeared from normal space, Admiral Kethvar realized that the galaxy would never be the same. The age of easy conquest was over, ended by a species that had spent half a million years ensuring that no one would ever catch them unprepared again. Fleet Commander Zarthek sat in his command chair aboard the Infinite Glory, staring at displays that showed impossible readings. Half of his ships reported equipment that had never been installed, while the other half were experiencing mechanical failures that defied every law of physics he knew. His mighty reinforcement fleet, sent to crush human resistance, had been reduced to a collection of confused vessels whose crews no longer trusted their own instruments. "Sir," his communications officer said weakly, "we're receiving a transmission from the human admiral." "Put it through," Zarthek ordered, though his voice lacked its usual authority. Sarah Chen Okafor's image appeared on the main screen, transmitted from her command center 3 kilometers beneath Earth's Pacific Ocean. Behind her, displays showed star charts that made the fleet commander's blood run cold. Red markers indicated human installations throughout the galaxy, hidden bases that had been established over hundreds of thousands of years while the hegemony thought humanity was extinct. "Fleet Commander," Sarah began, "I hope our demonstration has been educational, but I'm afraid your real education is just beginning." She gestured, and the display behind her zoomed in on a star system the hegemony knew well, their own capital system, Zephyr Prime. What they saw there shattered the last of their confidence. Human ships were emerging from hiding throughout the hegemony's home system. Vessels that had been disguised as asteroids, space debris, even as parts of the system's planets themselves, were revealing their true nature. The capital world of the greatest empire in their region of space was surrounded by a human fleet that had been hiding in plain sight for decades. "You see, gentlemen," Sarah continued, "the moment your species achieved faster-than-light travel, we knew you would eventually expand toward our territory. So we began preparations that you couldn't imagine. We didn't just prepare to defend our own system. We prepared to defend the galaxy from you." Admiral Kethvar found his voice, though it came out as a whisper. "How long have you been among us?" "Our first agents reached your territory 200 years ago," Sarah replied matter-of-factly. "We've been studying your technology, your culture, your military tactics from the inside. Some of your own scientists and engineers have been human, agents for their entire careers, guiding your technological development away from discoveries that might have made you truly dangerous. The implications hit both hegemony commanders like physical blows. Their empire's greatest achievements, their most advanced weapons, their strategic planning, all of it had been influenced by human manipulation stretching back centuries. The gravitational drive technology you developed 30 years ago, Sarah continued. We gave you the theoretical framework through one of our planted researchers. It's impressive by galactic standards, but it's based on principles we abandoned 300,000 years ago as too primitive for our needs. Fleet Commander Zarthek's voice cracked as he spoke. Our empire spans 12 star systems. We have conquered hundreds of worlds. And every single one of those conquests was possible because we allowed it, Sarah said calmly. We guided your expansion away from systems that contained species we valued. The 17 civilizations you believe you destroyed, they're living comfortably in new star systems we prepared for them, far from your expansion routes. We saved them by making you believe you had won total victories. The displays behind Sarah shifted to show those supposedly destroyed civilizations, thriving in hidden colonies, their populations intact and their cultures preserved. Species the hegemony had thought extinct were not only alive, but had been quietly developing their own technologies under human guidance. You've never actually destroyed anyone, Sarah continued. You've been playing a game where we wrote all the rules, controlled all the outcomes, and let you think you were winning because it served our purposes. Admiral Kethvar felt something break inside his chest as the full scope of human manipulation became clear. What purposes? We needed you to become exactly what you are now, Sarah explained. An aggressive, expanding empire that would force us to reveal ourselves when the time was right. You see, the galaxy is full of civilizations that need to understand what happens when someone threatens humanity. Your invasion of our system today serves as a perfect demonstration. The main display shifted to show communication channels throughout, the galaxy suddenly lighting up with transmissions. Every spacefaring species within 100 light-years was receiving the same message. Video recordings of the hegemony's defeat, broadcast from hidden human transmitters that had been placed throughout galactic civilization. Today, every intelligent species in this region of space is learning that humanity has returned, Sarah announced. They're seeing what happened to your fleets when you threatened our home. They're understanding that the age of casual conquest is over. Fleet Commander Zarthek watched in horror as the recording showed his mighty fleets being disabled by technologies that seemed like magic. Alien civilizations across the galaxy were witnessing the hegemony's humiliation, seeing their most advanced weapons treated like children's toys by a species they had thought was extinct. But here's what I want you to understand, Sarah said, her voice taking on a tone that made both hegemony commanders shiver. Everything you've seen today, every ship, every weapon, every demonstration of our capabilities represents approximately 1% of humanity's true strength. The display behind her shifted to show the full scope of human expansion. Star systems throughout the galaxy showed red markers indicating hidden human installations. Not dozens, not hundreds, but thousands of locations where humanity had been, quietly establishing bases for millennia. We have been preparing for this day for 500,000 years, Sarah continued. We have installations in 17 different galaxies. We have technology that can manipulate matter at the quantum level, create stable wormholes through higher dimensions, and edit the fundamental constants that govern reality itself. Admiral Kethvar's voice came out as a broken whisper. What do you want from us? Simple, Sarah replied. You will return to your empire and deliver a message to every world in hegemony space. The age of expansion through conquest is over. Any species that wishes to grow must now do so through cooperation, trade, and peaceful exploration. Aggressive expansion will no longer be tolerated by humanity. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. You have 1 galactic standard year to transition your empire from conquest to cooperation. After that, any world that continues. Aggressive expansion will find their systems surrounded by human fleets that make today's demonstration look like a gentle warning. Fleet Commander Zarthek found the courage to ask the question that terrified him most. And if we refuse? Sarah's smile was gentle, but her eyes held the weight of 500,000 years of preparation. Then we will demonstrate why 16 other Aggressive species chose to redirect their expansion efforts when we made similar offers. The galaxy has room for many civilizations, Fleet Commander, but it has no room for empires that threaten the peace we have worked so long to maintain. Transmission ended, leaving both hegemony commanders staring at blank screens in silence. Around them, their crews worked frantically to understand equipment that had been changed in ways their engineers couldn't explain. As the surviving ships of both fleets began their long journey back to hegemony space, Admiral Kethvar realized that they were carrying more than just reports of military defeat. They were carrying the news that would reshape galactic civilization. Humanity had returned, and the rules of the galaxy had changed forever. Behind them, Earth continued its slow rotation in space, peaceful and blue and patient. But now the galaxy knew the truth about that quiet world and the species that called it home. After 500,000 years of preparation, humanity had finally announced their return to galactic affairs, and no civilization would ever look at the stars the same way again. The age of conquest was over. The age of humanity had begun.